the markets of the world. It's particularly well sited for traffic with Scandinavia, the Baltic, Germany, Holland, Belgium and France. To landward, Hull is close to many important industrial areas, and its ideal geographical position is the basis of its present prominence as one of the nation's most progressive ports, handling £450 million worth of traffic a year. It is tide time. The early morning mists have yet to clear. The ships have made the 22-mile passage from the sea up the River Humber. The ocean carriers, attended by their tugs, maneuver towards the dock gates. Two trawlers home from Bear Island wait in midstream for their turn to enter the fish docks. The Bolton Abbey is already securing at Riverside Quay. The quay is in the river outside the docks, and so ships can berth at any state of the tide. The Bolton Abbey will be carrying a very mixed cargo according to the season. Fruits, salads, flower bulbs, as well as cheese, machinery, canned goods and so on. This is a regular overnight service to and from Rotterdam. In the locks of the King George dock is the Scottish trader. A week ago she was sailing through the warmth of the Gulf of Mexico, outward bound from New Orleans. In her vast holds she carries 16,000 tons of grain. Big, but not the biggest of such cargoes. Nearly 7,000 vessels a year breast the wide Humber estuary for the port of Hull. 7,000 vessels sailing to and from every principal port of the world, carrying a tremendous range of commodities inwards and outwards through the docks. Much of the recent success of the port is due to the large-scale improvements over the past 5 years, involving a variety of major engineering projects. But first, the beginnings, because they're important too. 800 years ago, Edward I gave the town its first charter and named it Kingston upon Hull. 700 years ago, Richard II confirmed and renewed the charter. 300 years ago, Charles II gave yet another charter. These and other charters confirm that for at least 1,000 years, Hull has been a seaport, and that the men of Hull have been concerned with the handling of cargoes, the movements of ships. Today, the port covers 7 miles of riverbank, from St. Andrew's fish docks in the west to the oil installations at Salt End in the east. 11 docks in all, 2,000 acres in extent, 200 acres of locked water, 12 miles of dock quays, 2 tidal riverside quays, 3 deep water jetties. In the lock of the fish dock, the Stella Leonis is back after 3 weeks at sea. The crew are ready for their 2 days ashore. Their hard, cold work is finished, and the bobbers will take over the unloading of the fish. Hull is the premier fishing port of Britain. 150 large deep-water trawlers fitted with every navigational and fishing aid are based here. In a year, they land up to 250,000 tons of fish, a quarter of Britain's total supplies. The laden trawlers lie alongside the fish markets, where early in the morning the fish is landed and auctioned, before most people have had their breakfast, quickly followed by cleaning, filleting, packing, and dispatch by road or rail. Once the trawlers are unloaded, they move over to the south side of the dock. Here the engineers, the radar experts, the radio men take over. In a couple of days, the ships must be restocked, overhauled, and made ready. The very latest trawlers, over 1,000 gross tons, are stern fishers, equipped to freeze the whole or part of their catches at sea. The Albert and William Wright docks and Riverside Quay are the most important of the commercial docks to the west of the River Hull. With about 30 acres of water space, they provide berths for vessels sailing between Hull and such places as Malmo, Bremen, Hamburg, Antwerp, Amsterdam, Copenhagen, Oslo, and ports in South Norway and Portugal. The Deblin is one of the vessels which sail weekly to and from Gdynia. The Texelstrom to and from Amsterdam. Except for her new type deck cranes, she's typical of the ships using these docks. At Hull, she loads machinery, cars, tractors and textiles. At Amsterdam, butter, bacon and foods in variety. On the south side of Albert Dock is one of the first sections of the reconstruction and modernization of the port, costing, with the adjacent riverside quay, £2 million. 9 new cranes with capacities of from 3 to 10 tons have been installed. Behind and served by the cranes are 4 large new transit sheds. The sheds are rail connected and the floors rise to provide a loading platform at the rear. Each of the 4 sheds is 290 feet by 82, giving a total of 95,000 square feet of floor space. At Riverside, the Borodino is unloading bacon and butter. Here there is 1,000 feet of new quay, 3 new sheds, 9 modern cranes. There's an immense concentration and variety of traffic in this area. Dairy produce from Scandinavia, vegetables from the Netherlands, citrus fruits from the Mediterranean, canned foods and other packed traffics from all parts of Europe. In the reverse direction, shipments are equally varied, tractors and other agricultural implements, industrial machinery and textiles, to mention but a few. To conserve quay space, the cranes are of the semi-portal type. The sheds at Riverside Quay and Albert Dock have been constructed with barrel vault concrete roofs and without interior pillars to give free movement to mechanical handling appliances. Fast, efficient cranes, doorways wide and high, excellent roof lighting, ample floor space, easy access by road and rail, all add up to faster, safer, and of course better handling of cargoes. To provide first-class facilities for passengers using these and adjacent berths, an attractive passenger terminal was included in the Riverside development. Outside, there is a large parking space, making access easy, and inside, passengers can go through the formalities of customs and immigration in warmth and comfort. Imaginative in design, making good use of glass for light and decoration, and giving a fine view of the busy Humber scene, the terminal's facilities are especially appreciated by the growing number of passengers using the overnight services to and from the continent. Across the River Hull, from Riverside Quay, is the Victoria Dock. Here the emphasis is upon timber working. Although the arrival of timber cargoes is concentrated into about 2/3 of the year, the work of timber handling and distribution goes on continually. As well as berthing regular sailings with Sweden and the Rhine ports, the Victoria Dock is the hub of the sawnwood importing trade. Nearly all the timber here is from Scandinavia. There's a large trade in pit props for the coal mines in the Midlands and the north of England. And the docks handle well over 100,000 tons a year. This is part of the sawnwood storage area. In all, Hull has about 1 million square yards available for stacking timber. The port serves as a most economical centre for the distribution of sawnwood to the consuming areas inland, close on 700,000 tons a year. But also, Hull itself has a considerable sawmilling industry and produces joinery work on a large scale. Hardwood imports, too, are prominent. East again from the Victoria Dock is the 53-acre Alexandra Dock, the home of many important shipping services. Working at full stretch and down for major development, this dock gives yeoman service to the port. Most of the berths here are equipped with sheds and crane power, but some are specifically provided to give overside discharging facilities to barges. Hull is the terminus of an extensive system of canals and inland waterways. The southeast side of the dock has 3 jetties, which divide this section into 4 bays, each capable of berthing 2 vessels of up to 420 feet. Nowadays, the Alexandra Dock not only deals with ocean-going ships, but regularly berths vessels in the near-continental fruit, vegetable and provision trades, as well as handling Scandinavian timber, paper and wood pulp. It also provides terminal facilities for regular shipping services to and from Sweden, Norway, Finland, the Mediterranean and Adriatic ports. The initial stages of redevelopment have already provided this dock with much improved facilities. At number 21 quay, number 28 shed, there are new batteries of modern quay cranes, including some of the very latest design and capable of lifting 7.5 tons. Future plans for the Alexandra dock include a heavy program of road widening, bringing up to date the access to berths at all points of the dock. The Alexandra dock also takes the larger type of timber ship from Canadian and Russian ports. The Malden Hill is discharging about 6,000 tons of deals, battens and boards from Igarka in the north of the USSR. To make full use of cargo space in ships, it's long been the custom to stow deals, battens and boards singly, which necessitates individual handling. Experiments are now being made in packaging timber, and Hull, second timber port of Britain, is in the forefront of these efforts to find speedier handling methods. Timber importing has been a speciality at Hull for many years, and this long experience has built up a skilled labor force capable of performing the various services required, discharging, sorting, stacking and delivering to on-carrying transport quickly and economically. One of the services the port supplies is about 7,000 rail vehicles for timber in transit from ship to local storage yards. At Salt End, at the eastern extremity of the port, are specialized berths for the discharging or loading of bulk liquid cargoes. The shore installations are sited on part of the 1,000-acre estate, which is available for industrial development. Built at a cost of £1.3 million, a new 1,600-foot concrete jetty with 2 berthing heads sweeps out into the River Humber. Just as a start, 1 million tons of silt, sand, peat and clay were dredged from the river. The pile driving was a feat in itself. In some places, piles of 130 feet in length had to be driven. Despite the difficulties encountered, the work progressed rapidly, and by 1961, the number 3 T-head was in use, followed by the new number 1 at the beginning of 1963. There are now 3 independent berths at the jetties, accommodating the big ocean-going tankers on the river face with provision for loading river tanker craft on the shore side. The new jetties were built to take tankers of up to 28,000 deadweight tons and to carry a total of 57 oil, chemical and service pipes to the oil and chemical installations ashore. Into Salt End come aldehydes, alcohols, molasses and liquid chemicals, as well as petroleum, and from it are shipped petroleum and chemical products. The tank farms at Salt End have a capacity well in excess of 150 million gallons, and new tanks are being added to handle the rapidly expanding trade. Alongside the petroleum depots are distillers' large laboratories and chemical processing plant. The jetty heads are equipped with the latest appliances for the handling of flexible hose to link the pipeline headers with the ship. Today, petroleum imports are higher than ever before. During the last 5 years, they have risen by 30% to 2.5 million tons. Presenting the very latest in accommodation for ships and cargoes is the King George dock, the fruits of progressive investment running into millions of pounds. Here are to be seen the flags of all nations. This is the largest of the 11 docks and comprises an estate of 300 acres of land and 55 acres of water. Here, impounding pumps have been installed which maintain the water at the level of high water spring tides, enabling vessels of up to 25,000 deadweight tons to be berthed. The King George dock contains 2 of Hull's 5 dry docks, each equipped for underwater voyage repairs or longer-term overhauls. This is the main grain dock. 1 million tons of grain in bulk are imported into Hull annually, and one of the city's principal industries is flour milling and the manufacture of grain products. Part of the reconstruction work included the building of an extension to the grain silo, which increased its capacity by 50%. The silo now consists of 2 buildings, 100 feet high, with a total of 432 reinforced concrete bins, each holding 140 tons, giving a total capacity of 60,000 tons of grain. In parallel with the policy of increasing the storage capacity for grain, a number of new grain elevators were put into commission to speed up the discharge of ships. One of these was the Carnaby, the 4th and largest of the floating suction elevators. Standing more than 90 feet above the water, costing over £250,000, she has 2 automatic weighing machines and is able to unload grain at the rate of 300 tons an hour. Careful design has enabled the operator to keep his eye on intake and delivery of the grain and his hand on the levers to give precise control over the entire operation. The Carnaby and the other floating elevators are employed in sucking the grain from the ship's holds and weighing and discharging it overside to barges. Hull is also one of the world's largest centers of the seed crushing and vegetable oil extracting industry. And a major proportion of palm kernels, ground nuts, cottonseed, castor seed, and other types of oil seeds are discharged and processed here. The various seed crushing mills at Hull, in addition to producing oil, are allied to the manufacture of cattle feeding products, margarine and soap, and together form one of the principal undertakings of the port. In addition to the floating elevators, there are 6 elevators based on shore. They unload into manholes in the quays, from where underground moving belts carry the grain straight into the silo. These 6 machines have a combined capacity of nearly 900 tons an hour. As the grain enters the building, it is automatically weighed before it is stowed in the bins. The completed silo has every modern facility. Grain can be delivered from it to any form of transport. At the east end, barges or coasters can load at chutes. Along both sides, rail vans can load. In the silo, the grain is well looked after. Readings are taken from each corner of the bins and temperatures recorded. By a complex system of elevators and conveyor bands, the grain can be maneuvered entirely mechanically within the silo building to meet any special requirements. A new addition to the silo is the provision of road loading bays at the west end. And a new service is that of weighed deliveries to road transport vehicles. When grain is being taken out of the silo for this purpose, an automatic portable weigher is moved into position under the bin, and simply and quickly the grain can be weighed as it flows down on its way to the belts. The belts carry it to any of the 16 special hoppers from which the grain can be fed to road vehicles. Grain can also be delivered in sacks to water, rail or road transport. The latest and most impressive feature of the development of the King George dock has been the expenditure of £4.75 million to extend the grain silo, increase the grain handling plant, and install impounding pumps. The plan also included increasing the crane power and extending the quays by 3,350 feet and the transit shed floor space by 500,000 square feet. This was a tremendous program to undertake, and at the same time to keep traffic moving without interruption. For this construction, some 4,000 piles, each 60 to 70 feet in length, were cast on the dock estate, driven to give firm foundations for the new quays and sheds. And this was only the beginning. Railway sidings had to be realigned, coal hoists removed, and a new 40-foot road constructed before what was to be virtually a new dock started to take shape. This major construction job, consuming 150,000 tons of concrete, 10,000 tons of steel reinforcement, and 100 miles of cabling and wiring, was scheduled to take 3 years. But that was to completion. Within a year, on some sections, the piles had been sunk and capped, the steel reinforcing knitted into place, and long, clean stretches of new quay had begun to appear. One of the first sections to be finished was an entirely new quay for the discharge of bulk cargoes. This was number 7, which is 600 feet long and equipped with 5 electric portal cranes of 10 tons capacity. With its associated grab equipment and nearby siding accommodation for 200 wagons, it has proved to be a fast-working berth for the discharge of such cargoes as ores, pig iron, ingots, and timber. The bauxite is destined for a new factory on the docks estate. This quay has also been specially fitted for the discharge of bulk molasses. Hull handles about 120,000 tons of molasses a year, and it is expected that the new facilities at number 7 quay will help to increase this considerably. Tankers, such as the Athol Duchess, which was the first tanker to use the quay, can pump the molasses ashore through underground pipelines to the nearby storage tanks. As work finished on the quays, it became possible to start work on the sheds. The 6 massive new sheds are the most spectacular part of the whole modernization program. 2 500 feet and 4 450 feet long, each shed is 150 feet wide, constructed in a single span, unimpeded by pillars. They were built around steel portal main frames of all-welded construction with red brick panel walls and aluminium roofs. These modern single-story transit sheds have many special features which will further increase the port's reputation for quick handling of wool, canned goods, fruit and provisions, and the many types of packaged goods. Hull is a well-established loading point for cars, tractors and vehicle parts, and the tonnage handled has increased every year for the past 10 years. The plans took this into account, and parks were built to store vehicles waiting shipment. The first of the 6 new sheds to be brought into use were the 2 on number 12 quay, and from above something can be seen of the wide quays which make for speedier working. Before the £4.75 million programme was begun, development at King George Dock had included the installation of 45 new cranes of 70-foot radius and 6 tons lifting capacity, giving twice the speed of the replaced equipment, and the rebuilding or resurfacing of all the principal quays. The merit of these new berths has been very clearly demonstrated by the fact that an improvement of 25% has been achieved in the turnaround of vessels. 100,000 tons of vehicles are shipped from Hull in a year, and this is part of a cargo for Vancouver. Wool is a very valuable import traffic at Hull, which at present deals with 1/3 of the total United Kingdom imports. The sorting of the wool into the various grades required by the Yorkshire woolen industry demands considerable knowledge and skill, which has become traditional among the men of Hull. The Dock Authority have specialized staff at King George Dock for handling wool in accordance with the varying needs of ships' agents, importing agents, receivers and hauliers. The fullest information is recorded by the Wool Office in advance, so that the forwarding work can go ahead as soon as the traffic is cleared from the vessel. Complete records of wool cargoes are kept, down to the details of the number of bales, countermarks, names of senders, and similar information. Up to 750,000 bales arrive at Hull annually. Once the new sheds were put into operation, it was found that they more than lived up to expectation. The floors, finished in asphalt, rise gradually from quay level to loading platform height. At the back are an ample number of doors, each 20 foot wide and 20 foot high, serving the loading bench, which can be used for either road or rail transport. At number 12 quay, the end doors are one of the shed's particular features. Electrically operated, they open to give 70 feet of clearway between the shed and the wide road loading bench. Conditions within the sheds are exceptionally light and airy, and artificial lighting, when required, is to a high standard. It is details such as this that make the sheds so successful. With 75,000 square feet of well-lit floor space in each shed, the task of sorting many thousands of bales of wool is greatly simplified. The sheds were specifically designed for the mechanical handling of palletized traffic, and £150,000 has been spent under the scheme on the purchase of mobile cranes, forklift trucks, platform trucks and pallets. Ideal as they are for wool, the new sheds are an equal boon for many other traffics, such as canned meats, fresh fruits and vegetables inwards, and for the concentration of miscellaneous export cargoes prior to shipment, ranging from bicycles to whiskey, chemicals to confectionery. One of the most satisfying aspects of the modernization of Hull is that the results are really justifying the work and expenditure involved. An example of this was the Scottish trader which brought grain from New Orleans. She was unloaded by 4 land-based and 3 floating suction elevators, which broke the port record by discharging 6,000 tons of grain in a day. These developments so far are but forerunners of others in the planning stage. With its continually improving facilities, with its expertise, with its capacity for quick working, Britain's third port looks confidently to the future. And it's worth repeating that Hull is as accessible as any port of Britain to the markets of Asia, Africa, the Americas and Australasia, and could not have been more strategically sited for trade with Europe. And so ships can berth at any state of the tide. The Bolton Abbey will be carrying a very mixed cargo according to the season: fruits, salads, flower bulbs, as well as cheese, machinery, canned goods and so on. This is a regular overnight service to and from Rotterdam. In the locks of the King George dock is the Scottish trader. A week ago, she was sailing through the warmth of the Gulf of Mexico, outward bound from New Orleans. In her vast holds, she carries 16,000 tons of grain. Big, but not the biggest of such cargoes. Nearly 7,000 vessels a year breast the wide Humber estuary for the port of Hull. 7,000 vessels sailing to and from every principal port of the world, carrying a tremendous range of commodities inwards and outwards through the docks. Much of the recent success of the port is due to the large-scale improvements over the past 5 years. Riverside quays, 3 deep-water jetties. In the lock of the fish dock, the Stella Leonis is back after 3 weeks at sea. The crew are ready for their 2 days ashore. Their hard, cold work is finished, and the bobbers will take over the unloading of the fish. Hull is the premier fishing port of Britain. 150 large deep-water trawlers fitted with every navigational and fishing aid are based here. In a year, they land up to 250,000 tons of fish, a quarter of Britain's total supplies. The laden trawlers lie alongside the fish markets, where early in the morning the fish is landed and auctioned before most people have had their breakfast, quickly followed by cleaning, filleting, packing and dispatch by road or rail. Once the trawlers are unloaded, they move over to the south side of the dock. Here the engineers, the radar experts, the radio men take over. In a couple of days, the ships must be restocked, overhauled and made ready. The very latest trawlers, over 1,000 gross tons, are stern fishers, equipped to freeze the whole or part of their catches at sea. The Albert and William Wright docks and Riverside Quay are the most important of the commercial docks to the west of the River Hull. With about 30 acres of water space, they provide berths for vessels sailing between Hull and such places as Malmö, Bremen, Hamburg, Antwerp, Amsterdam, Copenhagen, Oslo and ports in South Norway and Portugal. The Deblin is one of the vessels which sail weekly to and from Gdynia. The Texelstrom to and from Amsterdam. Except for her new type deck cranes, she's typical of the ships using these docks. At Hull, she loads machinery, cars, involving a variety of major engineering projects. But first, the beginnings, because they're important too. 800 years ago, Edward I gave the town its first charter and named it Kingston upon Hull. 700 years ago, Richard II confirmed and renewed the charter. 300 years ago, Charles II gave yet another charter. These and other charters confirm that for at least 1,000 years, Hull has been a seaport, and that the men of Hull have been concerned with the handling of cargoes, the movements of ships. Today, the port covers 7 miles of riverbank, from St. Andrew's fish docks in the west to the oil installations at Salt End in the east. 11 docks in all, 2,000 acres in extent, 200 acres of locked water, 12 miles of dock quays, 2 tidal the markets of the world. It's particularly well sited for traffic with Scandinavia, the Baltic, Germany, Holland, Belgium and France. To landward, Hull is close to many important industrial areas, and its ideal geographical position is the basis of its present prominence as one of the nation's most progressive ports, handling £450 million worth of traffic a year. It is tide time. The early morning mists have yet to clear. The ships have made the 22-mile passage from the sea up the River Humber. The ocean carriers, attended by their tugs, maneuver towards the dock gates. 2 trawlers home from Bear Island wait in midstream for their turn to enter the fish docks. The Bolton Abbey is already securing at Riverside Quay. The quay is in the river outside the docks.